When paperwork meets plasma cannons, Commander Vex-9 adjusted his ceremonial conquest robes for the third time as his flagship approached the third planet of this unremarkable solar system. The blue and green world below looked peaceful enough, its primitive radio signals chattering away like insects in a garden. According to the Zephyrian Collective's extensive database, this species called themselves humans and had barely managed to leave their own atmosphere in any meaningful way. Perfect, Vex-9 muttered to himself, reviewing the conquest protocols on his datapad. Form 247B for initial contact, followed by Form 891C for surrender demands, then the standard 72-hour waiting period before Form 12203A for asset cataloging. The collective had conquered 47 worlds using these exact procedures. This backward little planet would be number 48. Bureaucrat Prime Kel-7 slithered up beside him, her multiple arms sorting through a stack of documents that reached nearly to the bridge's ceiling. Commander, I have prepared the complete surrender package, 847 pages, including subsections for resource allocation, population management, cultural preservation guidelines, and the standard appendices covering proper subjugation etiquette. Excellent work, Prime, Vex-9 replied, trying to hide his excitement. This would be the easiest conquest in collective history. The humans had no interstellar presence, no energy shields, no plasma weapons. Their most advanced spacecraft looked like metal tubes with chemical rockets attached, open communications with their primary governing bodies. On the main screen, a face appeared that made several bridge officers step back in surprise. Instead of the expected fear or confusion, the human was smiling. Not the desperate smile of someone trying to negotiate for their life, but the amused expression of someone who had just heard a particularly good joke. "This is Captain Elena Vasquez of Earth Defense Command," the human said, her voice carrying an odd tone that Vex-9 couldn't quite identify. "I understand you folks want to have a chat about surrender terms?" Vex-9 straightened his robes and activated his most intimidating vocal modulator. "I am Commander Vex-9 of the Zephyrian Collective's 15th Administrative Fleet. Your world has been selected for integration into our empire. We have prepared comprehensive surrender documentation that covers all aspects of your transition to collective citizenship." Captain Vasquez leaned back in her chair, and that strange smile grew wider. "Surrender documentation? You mean like forms?" "Precisely," Kel-7 interjected, clearly pleased to discuss her specialty. "Form 247B establishes the legal framework for your capitulation, while Forms 891C through 891Q cover the specific terms and conditions. Then we have the asset declaration forms, population census requirements, and cultural preservation applications." The human captain blinked slowly, as if processing something incredible. "You're trying to conquer Earth with paperwork?" "The Collective's Administrative Conquest Protocol has proven 100% effective across 47 worlds," Vex-9 replied, a note of pride in his voice. "No species has ever successfully completed our surrender documentation requirements within the allotted time frame, thus legally validating our claim to their world, according to Galactic Administrative Law, Section 12.7. What happened next would be talked about in Zephyrian military academies for generations. Captain Elena Vasquez threw back her head and laughed. Not a nervous giggle or a desperate cackle, but a deep, genuine belly laugh that seemed to echo through both bridges simultaneously. "Oh, this is rich," she gasped between laughs. "You came all this way to give us homework?" She wiped a tear from her eye and composed herself. "Commander, let me ask you something. Have you ever dealt with the IRS?" "The what?" Vex-9 looked confused. "Internal Revenue Service. Our tax collection agency. If you think your 847 pages are intimidating, wait until you see what they can do with a simple audit." Vasquez gestured to someone off-screen. "Jenkins, get me the tax code." A younger human appeared, carrying what looked like several thick books. "Which volume, Captain?" "All of them." Vex-9 watched in growing confusion as the human officer stacked book after book on Vasquez's desk. Commander, she said cheerfully, this is just our tax documentation. About 74,000 pages, not counting the regulatory addendums and interpretation guidelines. We make our own citizens fill this out every year, and somehow they manage it. Kel 7's multiple eyes began twitching. That's impossible. No administrative system could function with such complexity. Oh, it gets better, Vasquez continued. Would you like to see our healthcare forms? Building permits? The paperwork required to start a small business? We've got bureaucracy that would make your empire weep with joy or terror. I'm not sure which. Major Jackson Morrison chose that moment to join the conversation, his scarred face appearing beside Vasquez. Captain, are these the folks trying to take over Earth with filing requirements? That's them, Tank. Morrison studied the alien faces on the screen with the expression of a man who had seen everything and found most of it amusing. Y'all do realize we've been fighting wars since before we invented writing, right? We've got soldiers who can field strip a rifle blindfolded, doctors who can perform surgery in a foxhole, and politicians who can filibuster for 24 hours straight. You really think forms are going to stop us? Commander Vex 9 felt the first stirrings of doubt. This wasn't following the script. The humans should have been intimidated, confused, desperate to negotiate. Instead, they seemed genuinely entertained by the collective's most sophisticated conquest protocol. Perhaps there has been a misunderstanding, he said carefully. The collective's fleet consists of 200 vessels with advanced plasma weaponry, energy shields, and faster-than-light capability. Resistance would be inadvisable. Vasquez nodded thoughtfully. Oh, we understand perfectly. You've got big ships and fancy weapons, and you want us to fill out forms acknowledging that you're in charge now. She leaned forward, and her smile took on a predatory edge that made several Zephyrians unconsciously back away from their stations. Here's the thing, Commander. We humans have a saying, you can't fight City Hall. Know what that means? That your administrative centers are impregnable, Kel 7 suggested hopefully. No, Morrison interjected with a grin. It means we've been dealing with impossible bureaucracy for thousands of years, and we've gotten very, very good at it. Suddenly, the collective's communication system began receiving data streams from Earth. Not the expected surrender documents, but something far more terrifying to a species that prized administrative order above all else. Forms. Thousands upon thousands of forms, each one requiring the previous form to be completed first. Each one referencing regulations that referenced other regulations in an endless spiral of bureaucratic complexity. What is this? Vex 9 demanded, staring at his screens in horror. Counter paperwork, Vasquez replied cheerfully. If you want to conquer Earth, you'll need to fill out our invasion permits. Form INV-1 through INV 2847, plus environmental impact studies, cultural sensitivity assessments, and of course the proper customs declarations for your weapons. Kel 7 was frantically scrolling through the documents, her multiple arms moving in agitated patterns. Commander, this is insane. Form INV 847 requires a certificate of completion from Form INV 846. But Form INV 846 can only be processed after Form INV 1203 has been notarized by an Earth official, and Form INV 1203 requires a small business license, Vasquez finished, which of course requires a background check, 3 references, and a 90-day waiting period. The bridge of the Zephyrian flagship had gone completely silent, except for the sound of Kel 7 hyperventilating into a paper bag that Morrison had somehow provided through the communication link. This is madness, Vex 9 whispered. No civilization could function under such conditions. And yet, here we are. Vasquez spread her arms wide. 6 billion humans, going about their daily business, somehow managing to navigate systems that make your conquest protocols look like a children's picture book. She paused for effect. The thing is, Commander, we didn't design these systems to be efficient. We designed them to be survivable. Any species that can cope with the DMV can cope with pretty much anything. Major Morrison leaned into frame again. Captain, should we tell them about the lawyers? Oh, good point, Tank. Vasquez turned back to the screen with renewed enthusiasm. Commander, I should mention that Earth has approximately 1.3 million practicing attorneys. That's people whose entire job is to find loopholes, argue about interpretations, and generally make simple things incredibly complicated. Would you like to speak with our legal department about your conquest attempt? Before Vex 9 could respond, another human appeared on screen. This one wore an expensive suit and carried a briefcase that seemed to radiate menace. Good afternoon, the lawyer said with a smile that was somehow more terrifying than Morrison's combat scars. I'm attorney Jennifer Walsh, representing Earth in this matter. I've reviewed your conquest documentation, and I'm afraid we'll need to file a motion to dismiss based on improper service, lack of jurisdiction, and failure to comply with our local invasion statutes. Your invasion statutes? Vex 9. His voice cracked. Oh yes, we passed those last Tuesday. City council meeting, very boring. The paperwork is quite extensive. Walsh opened her briefcase and pulled out a document that seemed to be at least 3 inches thick. Of course, if you'd like to contest our motion, you're welcome to file a counterbrief, though you'll need to serve all interested parties, including our Environmental Protection Agency, Department of Defense, and the local homeowners associations. Kel 7 fainted. Morrison looked at the unconscious alien and chuckled. Lightweight. Wait until she sees what happens when the HOA gets involved. As if summoned by his words, an elderly human woman appeared on screen, wearing a floral print dress and carrying a clipboard that looked like it had seen multiple wars. Excuse me, she said in the kind of voice that brooked no argument. I'm Margaret Henderson, president of the Terran Homeowners Association. I understand you gentlemen are planning some kind of construction project in our solar system? Vex 9 stared at the screen in growing horror. We're conducting a military conquest. Well, that's lovely, dear, but you'll still need to submit your plans for architectural review. I'm particularly concerned about these plasma weapons you mentioned. Are they energy efficient? We have very strict guidelines about light pollution. This isn't happening, Vex 9 muttered to himself. This can't be happening. Captain Vasquez reappeared, now flanked by Morrison, Walsh, and Henderson, plus what looked like a small army of other humans, each carrying their own stack of forms and looking eager to help process the aliens' conquest attempt through proper channels. Commander, Vasquez said gently, I want you to understand something. We're not refusing your surrender documents because we're afraid. We're refusing them because, frankly, they're amateur. If you want to conquer Earth, you're going to have to do better than a few hundred pages of forms. She gestured to her companions. These people deal with regulations, legal challenges, and administrative nightmares that would drive your entire species to madness, every single day. And they do it with a smile, because that's what humans do. We take impossible systems and somehow make them work. Morrison stepped forward. The funny thing is, Commander, while you've been trying to figure out our paperwork, we've been preparing for war. You gave us a 72-hour grace period to review your documents, remember? The tactical displays on both ships suddenly lit up with new contacts. Ships were rising from Earth's surface, emerging from hidden bases on the moon, and dropping out of faster-than-light travel from the outer planets. But these weren't the primitive chemical rockets the collective had expected. These were sleek, dangerous-looking vessels that bristled with weapons technology that seemed far too advanced for such a primitive species. Forms in triplicate, death from above. Commander Vex 9 stared at his tactical display in complete bewilderment. The 200 ships of the Collective's 15th Administrative Fleet, which had seemed so imposing just hours ago, were now vastly outnumbered by an Earth armada that had appeared as if from nowhere. Sleek human warships surrounded his fleet in formations that looked more like art than military strategy, their weapons powered up but not yet firing. How is this possible? He demanded of his tactical officer. Our intelligence reports indicated they had no interstellar capability. Lieutenant Zarfor frantically worked at his console, his tentacles dancing across multiple displays simultaneously. Sir, our sensors are detecting human vessels with technology that matches or exceeds our own capabilities. Their energy signatures suggest advanced plasma weaponry, quantum shielding, and Commander, some of these ships are using propulsit on systems we don't recognize. On the main screen, Captain Vasquez was still smiling that infuriating human smile. Behind her, the bridge of what was obviously a state-of-the-art warship hummed with activity. Commander, I should probably mention that while you were busy preparing your conquest forms, we've been a little busy ourselves. A new voice joined the conversation, speaking with crisp military precision. This is Admiral Chen of the Terran Space Command. Commander Vex 9, your fleet is completely surrounded. We have weapons locks on all of your vessels. However, in the interest of following proper protocol, we're prepared to accept your surrender if you fill out the appropriate paperwork. Vex 9's translator unit struggled with the concept as dozens of forms began materializing on his communication screen. Each one was more complex than the last, with requirements that seemed to reference regulations that couldn't possibly exist. This is Form Sir 1, Admiral Chen continued helpfully. Basic surrender documentation. You'll need to fill this out in triplicate, have it notarized by a neutral party, and submit it along with Forms Sir 2 through SUR 847, which cover everything from prisoner of war accommodations to dietary restrictions for your crew. Bureaucrat Prime Kel 7 had regained consciousness, but was now making small whimpering sounds as she scrolled through the human paperwork. Commander, this is worse than anything we've ever encountered. Form Sir 23 requires a detailed psychological evaluation of every crew member, including their childhood fears and preferred breakfast cereals. Form Sir 156 demands a complete genealogy going back 12 generations, and Form Sir 401 appears to be some kind of tax document that I don't even understand. Bureaucrat Prime Kel 7 had regained consciousness, but was now making small whimpering sounds as she scrolled through the human paperwork. Commander, this is worse than anything we've ever encountered. Form Sir 23 requires a detailed psychological evaluation of every crew member, including their childhood fears and preferred breakfast cereals. Form Sir 136 demands a complete genealogy going back 12 generations, and Form Sir 401 appears to be some kind of tax document that I don't even understand. Major Morrison appeared on screen, holding what looked like a military manual the size of a small building. Oh, you ain't seen nothing yet. That's just the basic surrender forms. If you want to keep your ships, you'll need to fill out the Equipment Retention Request Package. That's Forms EQR1 through EQR3 ton 247, plus supporting documentation. What kind of supporting documentation? Vex 9 asked weakly. Well, proof of ownership, maintenance records, environmental impact assessments for each vessel, psychological fitness evaluations for every crew member, and of course registration with our Department of Interstellar Vehicles. Morrison grinned. That last one's a real killer. Takes about 6 months if everything goes perfectly, which it never does. Attorney Walsh reappeared, now carrying what appeared to be multiple briefcases. I should also mention that any alien species wishing to surrender to Earth must first apply for refugee status, which requires Forms RF1 through RF892, plus a background check that includes interviews with every person you've ever met. The Elderly Homeowners Association president was back too, clipboard at the ready. And don't think you can just park those ships anywhere, young man. Our orbital zoning laws are very specific. You'll need to submit site plans, environmental impact studies, and get approval from no fewer than 12 different rent municipal agencies. Vex 9 looked around his bridge at his increasingly panicked crew. This was not how conquests were supposed to work. The collective's protocols were elegant, simple, efficient. You arrive, you present forms, the target species fails to comply within the time limit, you take over. It had worked on 47 worlds without a single exception. This is absurd, he finally managed. No species could actually function under such conditions. Your own civilization would collapse under the weight of such bureaucracy. Captain Vasquez laughed again. Commander, let me tell you a story. About 50 years ago, a human wanted to build a small deck behind his house. Just a simple wooden platform where he could sit and drink coffee in the morning. You know how long it took him to get all the permits and approvals? How long? Vex 9 found himself asking despite his better judgment. 14 months. 14 months to build a 10 by 10 wooden platform. He needed architectural reviews, environmental impact assessments, neighborhood approval, city permits, county permits, state permits, and federal oversight because there was a wetland within 500 meters of his property. Vasquez paused to let this sink in. And you know what the beautiful thing was? He built it anyway, because that's what humans do. We find a way. Admiral Chen's face reappeared on screen. The thing is, Commander, while you've been trying to process our paperwork, we've been studying your people. Your entire military philosophy is based on overwhelming administrative complexity. You count on species giving up rather than dealing with your forms. It's brilliant, really, Morrison added. Elegant, efficient. No unnecessary violence, no destroyed infrastructure. You just bore your enemies into submission. But here's the problem, Vasquez continued. You tried that technique on a species that invented the DMV, the IRS, and municipal building codes. We don't surrender to paperwork, Commander. We weaponize it. As if to demonstrate her point, the human communication systems began flooding the collective fleet with more forms. Not just surrender documents now, but customs declarations, immigration paperwork, tax assessments, and what appeared to be a complete census questionnaire that wanted to know the favorite color and shoe size of every crew member. Lieutenant Czar 4 was hyperventilating now. Commander, they're requesting our educational transcripts, employment history, and something called a credit check for the entire fleet. And there's a form here that wants to know if we've ever been convicted of a felony, what our annual income is, and whether we prefer cats or dogs. I don't even know what cats or dogs are, Vex 9 shouted. Oh, those are earth animals, Vasquez explained helpfully. Very important for psychological profiling. We'll need you to take our standardized personality assessment as well. It's only 3,847 questions, and it should give us a complete picture of your mental health status, compatibility with Earth culture, and preferred pizza toppings. What is pizza? Kel 7 whispered in horror. Food item, Morrison replied. Very controversial. There are ongoing legal battles about whether pineapple belongs on it. We'll need you to choose a side for the conflict resolution paperwork. The final straw came when a cheerful human voice announced over the communication system, Attention Zephyrian Fleet. This is the Earth Department of Motor Vehicles. We understand you're looking to operate vehicles in Earth space. Please be advised that you'll need to obtain interstellar operating permits for each of your vessels. Testing will be conducted next Tuesday at 8:00 a.m. local time. Please bring 2 forms of identification, proof of insurance, and exact change for the testing fee. That was when Commander Vex 9 snapped. Enough, he roared, his voice echoing through both bridges. This is madness. No species should be able to exist under such conditions. How do you get anything done? How do you function as a civilization? How do you even leave your homes in the morning? The humans on screen exchanged glances, and Captain Vasquez's expression softened slightly. Commander, can I tell you a secret? What? Vex 9 asked weakly. Most of the time we don't actually follow the rules. The silence that followed this statement was so profound that several Zephyrian officers fainted. We make them, Vasquez continued, because we're human and we can't help ourselves. We love creating systems and regulations and forms for everything. But when push comes to shove, when something important needs to get done, we just do it. We find loopholes, we bend rules, we ignore regulations, and we get the job done anyway. Morrison nodded. The deck guy I mentioned? He built it in a weekend while the permits were still being processed. Figured he'd deal with the consequences later. And that, Admiral Chen added, is why you never had a chance. Your entire conquest strategy is based on the assumption that species actually follow their own rules. But humans, we're creative rule breakers. We'll spend months creating the perfect regulation and then immediately start looking for ways around it. The tactical displays showed the human fleet moving into tighter formations around the collective ships. But instead of the aggressive postures Vex 9 expected, The human vessels seemed to be performing some kind of elaborate dance, their movements coordinated but playful, almost artistic. "You see this?" Vasquez gestured to the tactical display. "Our fleet formation isn't based on any regulation or protocol. It's based on a jazz improvisation our fleet commander heard last week. We're making it up as we go along, and somehow it's working better than anything in our official tactical manuals." "That's impossible," Kel-7 whispered. "Military strategy requires careful planning, detailed protocols, standardized procedures." "Lady, we fought a war with muskets while writing strongly worded letters to the enemy about taxation policies," Morrison laughed. "We've never done anything the way we were supposed to." Commander Vex 9 stared at his displays, watching his perfectly organized, regulation-compliant fleet being outmaneuvered by humans who appeared to be conducting military operations based on musical principles and powered by pure stubbornness. "I don't understand," he said finally. "How can chaos defeat order? How can randomness overcome careful planning?" Captain Vasquez's smile was gentle now, almost sympathetic. "Because, Commander, order and chaos aren't opposites. They're dance partners. The universe is messy and complicated and beautiful, and any species that tries to reduce it to forms and procedures is going to miss all the interesting parts." She stood up, and for the first time, Vex 9 could see the full bridge of her ship. It was organized chaos, crew members working at multiple stations, displays showing everything from tactical information to what looked like someone's lunch order, and in one corner, a small plant that seemed to be thriving under artificial light. "We're giving you a choice, Commander," she said. "You can keep trying to conquer us with paperwork, in which case we'll be happy to bury you in forms until your entire fleet goes insane. Or you can retreat back to your own space and tell your superiors that Earth is under the protection of the most dangerous force in the galaxy." "What force is that?" Vex 9 asked. "Humans who have learned to love the chaos." The communication ended, leaving the Zephyrian bridge in stunned silence. Around them, the human fleet continued its impossible dance, beautiful and deadly and completely unpredictable. Commander Vex 9 looked at his crew, at his forms, at his carefully planned conquest that had turned into the most bewildering experience of his long career. Then he did something that would have been unthinkable just hours before. He laughed. "Navigation," he called out. "Set course for home, and send a message to Collective Command. Mission unsuccessful. Recommend removing Earth from Conquest target list. Reason: humans." As the collective fleet began its retreat, Captain Vasquez's voice came over the communication system one last time. "Commander, you're welcome back anytime. Just remember to bring the proper forms." The last thing Vex 9 saw as his ship jumped to faster-than-light speed was the human fleet, still dancing among the stars, creating beauty from chaos and somehow making it look easy. In his final report he would write, "Recommendation: avoid further contact with species designation human. Reason: they are absolutely insane, and it appears to be contagious." The collective would mark Earth as a forbidden zone within the week. But somewhere in the depths of space, Vex 9 found himself humming a tune he'd never heard before, something chaotic and beautiful that seemed to capture the rhythm of jazz improvisation and the music of the spheres. Perhaps, he thought, chaos wasn't so terrible after all.